Jackie, thanks very much for taking the time. I know you're very busy here today in Dublin. Looking back at what you mentioned in the Dáil last week about point-to-point racing after being stopped, how are we looking going forward? Is there any hope of getting us back going sooner rather than later?
Well, I raised it here in the convention last week with the Taoiseach, and I'm going to keep pushing every political avenue I can this week to see can we get some movement on it. This has serious financial implications for the national hunt breeding industry. Point-to-pointing is a shop window where a very significant amount of our horses are sold. Thankfully, some for large sums of money. But if that point-to-pointing isn't able to go ahead, the people who have invested very heavily in that bloodstock won't be able to go back next summer and buy the 3-year-olds. And the 3-year-olds that have been bought at the sales in Goff or Tattersalls, you have that go back to the yearlings and the foals. So it has going to have very severe financial implications for the whole national hunt breeding industry. And this might be an amateur sport by name, but it's run by very, very professional people. And we saw half of the Grade 1 winners in Cheltenham last year were graduates of the Irish point-to-point field. We see Bob Ollinger there in the last couple of months winning the point-to-point in October and is now favoured for one of the races in Cheltenham in March. So this is a big business, huge money involved. And the other point is, no instance of COVID had arisen out of point-to-point racing. And I made a suggestion to Horse Racing Ireland that, could race courses be used as a venue for point-to-pointing, and the standards that they use implementing at this stage to make sure that COVID, the risk of COVID transmission is kept to an absolute minimum. And we have had racing continue, thankfully, since I suppose the middle of April. Racing has been continuing at tracks all over the country, and thankfully no instance of COVID, no clusters of COVID have come out of any race meetings. So I think the possibility of maybe having point-to-point racing on race courses should be looked at. I think the priority has to be the 4 or 5-year-old maidens, which are the shop window for the sales, that they should be accommodated first. And they start, in the first weekend of February, the 4-year-old maidens, and there's a lot of people there with an awful lot of capital tied up, and I want to see those maidens starting very, very quickly. And if you get a dry spring, unfortunately, those horses won't be able to run when you get into, March, April time. We get a dry spring, and hopefully we will get a good spring. But the people who would have, those young point-to-pointers to run would want to run them on what we consider traditional winter ground. So time is of the essence to try and get point-to-point season up and running again. I think every avenue for that to happen has to be explored.
I think it's brilliant that you mentioned about the race courses. As you said, no cases have come out of the point-to-points. I was there every week. It was run in such a professional manner. By switching it to the race courses, there's plenty of race courses around the country that are sitting idle at the minute, not being used. But like you mentioned, there's plenty of other courses that can run on inside tracks, have fences that can move in and out, run at weekends. It's ideal, and I'm glad that you have put it to them, and hopefully they can turn on this and get point-to-pointing back sooner rather than later, as you said, because ground and time is against everybody.
Yeah, every option has to be explored, and unfortunately COVID is going to be with us for another couple of months, and we have widespread availability of the vaccine. COVID is going to be a major threat to the health of our nation, and obviously health is paramount. But we've seen that racing can be conducted under proper regulation without any threat to human health. And I think we have to explore every avenue for point-to-pointing to try and get the racing up and going very, very quickly. And time, as I said, we need to get these 4-year-olds and 5-year-old maidens running in February, when they can run on the kind of ground that they will be experiencing throughout their careers, and can show what they're made of, and that their potential customers then will see it, and that people can recoup the capital that they have invested, and are able to go again to the sales next June and July to replenish their yards, and allow the people who sell the 3-year-olds then to go back and buy the foals and yearlings. So it's a conveyor belt, and when you stop one element of that conveyor belt, the whole national hunt breeding industry comes under extreme pressure.
When will this be explored, do you think? When do you think there's a chance of getting an answer on this, that they can switch to race courses and get going again?
Negotiations on this are ongoing, and lobbying is ongoing, and I'm not the only TD that's lobbying. We had an agricultural Oireachtas committee yesterday, which I'm chairman, and it was discussed there, and a number of TDs and senators made very serious contributions to it. So I'm not the only one that's been lobbied on this. Everyone, definitely every rural TD has been lobbied very, very heavily. This is an industry in rural Ireland. It's not a sport. It's an industry, and that's the point we have to get across. This is an industry with huge capital tied up, and huge implications if their shop window is closed on them for any significant period of time. So when we get an answer, You know, this is politics. It's a changing world. Thankfully, yesterday we saw the figures on COVID. You know, COVID cases down to under 1,000. I think it was 920 something was down to yesterday. Hopefully that figure will stay going downwards rapidly, like it was a multiple of that 10 days to 2 weeks ago. So we can keep that figure going down. You know, we'll be, you know, then everything can be looked at with fresh eyes. But I think the idea of using race courses, or you know, making even HRI staff that are used to implementing all the COVID regulations, if they could be employed at point-to-point racing to try and, you know, let the minister have assurance and the government have assurance that all the proper guidelines and safety issues are being addressed. And you know, you are out in the open air. It's not a confined space. You are out in the open air. Owners have to respect that they can't go to the meetings. That's the same at racetracks at the moment. You know, that is a huge inconvenience, but that has to be put up with. The main thing here is to allow these 4 and 5 year olds to run, so as prospective owners can see them displaying their wares, they can be sold, and then our industry, our breeding industry, can continue as normal as possible in this abnormal year.
Is there any, obviously, they're doing a great job at race courses, that in terms of these meetings with the government, can HRI do any more, or are their hands tied?
No, I think everyone can lobby the case and put forward, you know, how racing is being ran safely, and how we can do things to allow point-to-pointing to recommence. I'm not saying I haven't got all the information at my disposal. I'm not an encyclopedia about what's the best way to go about this, and suggestions for people involved in the industry as to how they think they could safely recommence. You know, my phone is there, and by all means ring me with your suggestions and ideas about what we can do to recommence safely. But for my part, I will be keeping on all the pressure I can to make the valid case that this is a vital industry, and we're the foremost breeders in the world of national hunt horses. You know, this is part of our heritage. It's hugely important to us, but the amount of capital that's tied up in it, and 1 year without being able to sell these horses could do terminal damage to our breeding industry, and that's what we have to avoid. And that's what we provide by whatever means we can at our disposal.
Jackie, thanks very much for taking the time. I know you're very busy, and I can safely say I can speak on behalf of everybody in racing. Thanks very much for your very hard work that you're putting in to try and get point-to-point racing to recommence.
Well, David, good to speak to you.